The San Francisco fog rolled thick across the bay, shrouding Christopher Turner's modernist mansion in an ethereal haze. From his home office window on the top floor, he could barely make out the Golden Gate Bridge's distinctive silhouette. The view usually brought him peace after long days of board meetings and strategy sessions, but tonight his mind was elsewhere. His phone sat heavy in his hand, Chloe's message still lighting up the screen. "Chris, I need help. Please." 4 words that made his carefully constructed world tilt on its axis. 24 years of friendship, and she had never asked him for help. Not when she struggled through college, not when she moved to Toronto to pursue her teaching career, not even when she stopped answering his calls 6 months ago. Christopher ran his fingers through his dark hair, a habit from childhood that even years of corporate training hadn't broken. At 34, he was one of Silicon Valley's youngest billionaires, the CEO who had transformed Turner Technologies from a startup in his garage to a tech empire. He could solve complex algorithms in his sleep, predict market trends before they happened, but he couldn't decode the tremor in Chloe's voice when she finally called. The security system chimed, alerting him to a car approaching the gate. Christopher's heart stumbled as he watched the taxi wind its way up the private drive. Even through the fog and darkness, he recognized her silhouette in the back seat. Some things you never forget no matter how many years pass. He was halfway down the curved staircase when Maria, his housekeeper, opened the front door. The night air rushed in, carrying with it the scent of the bay and something else. Baby powder. Chloe Adams stood in his doorway, a baby carrier, in one hand a worn duffel bag in the other. Her honey blonde hair was pulled back in a messy ponytail, dark circles shadowing her green eyes. She looked smaller than he remembered, more fragile, but still unmistakably Chloe. "I'm sorry," she whispered, her voice cracking. "I didn't know where else to go." Before Christopher could respond, a tiny whimper came from the carrier. Chloe's face softened as she looked down at her daughter, and in that moment, Christopher saw the echo of the girl who used to build sandcastles with him on Brighton Beach, who dreamed bigger than anyone he knew. "Come in," he said, taking the duffel bag from her hand. "You never have to apologize to me, Chloe. Never." Maria appeared silently, her motherly instincts taking over as she guided Chloe toward the kitchen. "You look hungry, dear. When was the last time you ate?" Chloe's hesitation was answer enough. Christopher felt something twist in his chest, the same protective surge he'd felt when neighborhood bullies made fun of her glasses in 4th grade, when her first boyfriend broke, her heart in high school when her parents died in that car crash during their sophomore year of college. But this was different. The Chloe he knew radiated confidence, challenged him at every turn, laughed with her whole body. This Chloe seemed haunted, as if something, or someone, had systematically dismantled her spirit. In the kitchen's warm light, he finally got a clear look at the baby. Olivia, he remembered from Chloe's few texts months ago. She couldn't be more than 6 months old, with wisps of blonde hair and her mother's delicate features. As if sensing his gaze, the baby's eyes fluttered open, startlingly blue, nothing like Chloe's green ones or his own brown ones. A painful reminder of the man who had broken Chloe's heart. "She's beautiful," Christopher said softly, watching as Chloe prepared a bottle with practiced movements. The domesticity of the scene made his chest ache. How many nights had he imagined Chloe in his home? But not like this. Never like this. "She's the only thing that makes sense anymore," Chloe replied, testing the formula's temperature on her wrist. Her hands were trembling slightly, and without thinking, Christopher stepped closer, steadying her arm. The touch sent electricity through his fingers, just like it had when they were teenagers. Some things never change, he thought ruefully, including the way he'd loved her for as long as he could remember. "Tell me what happened," he said, keeping his voice gentle. "The real story this time, not the abbreviated version you gave me on the phone." Chloe looked up at him, and for a moment he saw a flash of her old fire. "You'll think I'm an idiot. Try me." She sank into one of the kitchen chairs, cradling Olivia as she fed her. The baby's tiny hands wrapped around the bottle, her eyes fixed on her mother's face with complete trust. "His name is David Lancaster," Chloe began, her voice hollow. He was a parent at my school. Charming, successful, everything seemed perfect. He told me he was divorced, that he wanted to start fresh. I believed him. She laughed bitterly. God, I believed everything. Christopher's jaw tightened, but he forced himself to remain still, to let her speak. When I told him I was pregnant, Chloe's voice caught. He told me he was married, had been the whole time. He has 2 other children. He said I was nothing but a mistake, that I was... She trailed off, but Christopher could fill in the blanks. He'd seen enough of the business world's cruel side to imagine the kind of verbal weapons a man like that would use. I thought I could handle it alone, Chloe continued, shifting Olivia to her shoulder, patting her back with practiced ease. I had my savings, my job. But then the complications started. The doctors said it was stress, that I needed rest. I couldn't work full-time anymore, and Toronto is so expensive. She looked around his pristine kitchen, shame coloring her cheeks. I never wanted to be this person, Chris, the one who shows up on someone's doorstep, asking for help. Christopher knelt beside her chair, making sure she met his eyes. You're not just someone, Chloe. You're my best friend. Your family. The word felt simultaneously true and false in his mouth. Family was safe, platonic. It didn't encompass the way his heart still raced when she smiled, how he measured every relationship against his feelings for her and found them all wanting. I'll help you get back on your feet, he promised. Whatever you need. The guest house is yours for as long as you want it. It's private, has its own garden, plenty of room for both of you. Chloe's eyes filled with tears. Chris, I can't accept... Yes, you can, he interrupted firmly. Consider it 24 years of birthday presents I owe you. That earned him a watery laugh, and Christopher felt a familiar warmth spread through his chest. He'd always been able to make her laugh, even in their darkest moments. The guest house has a nursery, Maria interjected, reminding them of her presence. My granddaughter used it when she visited last summer. We can have it ready in an hour. Christopher shot her a grateful look. Maria had been with his family since he was a child. She knew exactly what he needed before he asked. Thank you, Chloe whispered, looking between them. Both of you. Later that night, after Maria had helped Chloe settle into the guest house, Christopher stood at his bedroom window. The fog had lifted slightly, revealing lights twinkling across the bay. In the garden below, warm light spilled from the guest house windows, creating a gentle glow in the darkness. He pressed his forehead against the cool glass, remembering the weight of Chloe's head on his shoulder as she'd finally broken down, telling him everything. The verbal abuse, the manipulation, the way David Lancaster had systematically destroyed her self-worth while wearing a wedding ring. Christopher's hands clenched into fists. He had resources, connections. It would be easy to destroy Lancaster's life the way he had destroyed Chloe's, but revenge wouldn't heal Chloe's wounds or give Olivia the stability she deserved. What they needed was time, safety, and love. 3 things Christopher had in abundance, even if he could only openly offer 2 of them. As if on cue, a baby's cry pierced the night, quickly followed by Chloe's soothing murmur. Christopher closed his eyes, listening to the domestic sounds that had replaced his home's usual silence. They were here. They were safe. For now, that had to be enough. But as he turned away from the window, Christopher couldn't silence the voice in his head that had haunted him since childhood. What if it could be more? Dawn broke over San Francisco Bay, painting the sky in watercolor shades of pink and gold. Christopher stood in his kitchen, staring at the coffee maker as if it might reveal the secrets of the universe. He'd been awake since 3 a.m., when Olivia's cries had echoed through the property. He hadn't gone to help, wouldn't cross that boundary, without invitation, but sleep had proven impossible. The baby monitor on his counter crackled to life. Maria had insisted on setting up the system, claiming it was just in case. But Christopher suspected she understood more than she let on. Through the subtle static, he heard Chloe's gentle humming, a lullaby he remembered from their childhood. You're up early? Chloe's voice made him jump. She stood in the kitchen doorway, Olivia nestled against her chest in a baby carrier. Even exhausted, hair messy from sleep, she took his breath away. Couldn't sleep, he admitted, pulling a second mug from the cabinet. Coffee? God, yes. She sank into a kitchen chair, adjusting Olivia's position with practiced ease. I forgot what it was like to have decent coffee. My machine broke 2 months ago and I couldn't justify buying a new one. The casual comment hit Christopher like a physical blow. He thought of Chloe in her Toronto apartment, alone with a newborn, counting every penny. Meanwhile, he'd been signing million-dollar contracts, completely unaware of her struggles. I'm sorry, he said quietly, placing her coffee in front of her. I should have known something was wrong when you stopped calling. Chloe's fingers wrapped around the warm mug. Don't. You couldn't have known. I got really good at pretending everything was fine. Too good. Christopher sat across from her, studying her face in the morning light. The dark circles under her eyes were still there, but some of yesterday's tension had eased. You don't have to pretend anymore, Chloe, not with me. Something flickered in her eyes, uncertainty, maybe fear, before she looked down at Olivia. The baby was awake now, tiny fingers reaching for a strand of Chloe's hair that had escaped her messy bun. I need to find a job, she said abruptly. I can't just live off your charity forever. It's not charity. Chris. Her voice held, a warning note he recognized from childhood. I need to do this for myself. He nodded slowly, respecting her determination while his mind raced through possibilities. What about remote teaching? You could work from here, set your own hours. With my recent gap in employment, and no references from my last position? Chloe laughed bitterly. I basically disappeared in the middle of a semester. No school is going to touch me. You'd be surprised, Christopher said carefully. I might know someone who runs an online education platform. They're always looking for experienced teachers to develop curriculum. Chloe's eyes narrowed. You're not going to pull strings for me. I'm going to make a phone call, he corrected. What happens after that is entirely up to you and your qualifications, which, need I remind you, include a master's degree in education and 8 years of classroom experience. She opened her mouth to argue, but Olivia chose that moment to make her hunger known. The baby's whimpers quickly escalated to full-throated cries. Here, Christopher stood, already moving to the kitchen counter where he'd noticed Chloe setting up her bottle station the night before. Let me help. To his surprise, she didn't protest. He watched as she demonstrated the proper measurements, the specific temperature, the testing process. His hands, usually so sure on keyboard or touchscreen, felt clumsy with the tiny scoop and delicate bottle. You're doing fine, Chloe assured him, adjusting his grip slightly. Support her head like this. Yes, perfect. The trust in that simple act, letting him feed her daughter, made Christopher's throat tight. Olivia's blue eyes fixed on his face as she drank, tiny fingers wrapping around his pinky. Despite the painful reminder of her biological father, Christopher couldn't help but fall a little in love with this tiny person who shared Chloe's determined spirit. She likes you, Chloe said softly. She's usually fussy with strangers. Must be my natural charm, he quipped, earning a genuine laugh from Chloe. Some things never change, she shook her head. You always could make friends with anyone. Not anyone, he corrected, thinking of countless business dinners and charity galas where he'd played the role of charismatic CEO while feeling completely alone. Just the people who matter. A comfortable silence fell between them, broken only by Olivia's contented baby sounds. Through the kitchen windows, Christopher could see Maria arriving for the day, her arms full of grocery bags. She'd insisted on doing a proper shopping trip, muttering about the need for real food in a house with a nursing mother. I should warn you, Christopher said, carefully burping Olivia the way Chloe had shown him. Maria's going to try to feed you approximately every hour. It's her way of showing love. I remember, Chloe smiled, a real smile that reached her eyes. She used to sneak us cookies when we studied for AP exams in your parents' kitchen, said brain food was essential. The memory hung between them. Two teenagers sprawled across textbooks, Maria's chocolate chip cookies growing cold as they debated calculus formulas and English essays. Back then, Christopher had thought his feelings for Chloe would fade with time, that college and careers would dull the ache in his chest whenever she smiled. He'd been wrong. "I should get ready for work," he said reluctantly, passing Olivia back to her mother. The baby immediately snuggled into Chloe's neck, eyes drooping. "Of course," Chloe nodded, but something in her expression made him pause. "It's just, the guest house is beautiful, but it's a little quiet during the day. Would it be okay if we spent some time in the main house? Just sometimes?" "Chloe," Christopher touched her shoulder gently, ignoring the way his skin tingled. At the contact, "This is your home now. Both houses, the gardens, everything. You don't need permission to be anywhere on the property." She blinked rapidly, and he pretended not to notice the tears gathering in her eyes. "Thank you," she whispered. Later, as Christopher navigated through San Francisco's morning traffic, his mind kept drifting back to the kitchen scene. He'd had countless fantasies about domestic mornings with Chloe, but none had included a baby that wasn't his, or the shadow of another man's cruelty darkening her eyes. His phone buzzed with a calendar reminder. Board meeting at 10 a.m. Acquisition proposals to review. Quarterly projections to analyze. The everyday machinery of running a tech empire demanded his attention, but for the first time in his career, Christopher found himself resenting the time away from home. He wanted to be there when Maria inevitably overwhelmed Chloe with food and motherly advice. He wanted to learn more about caring for Olivia, to see the trust in Chloe's eyes when she let him help. He wanted what he couldn't have. Not yet. Maybe not ever. His phone buzzed again. A text from Chloe this time. She'd sent a picture of Olivia sleeping in the garden, sunshine casting patterns through the leaves onto her peaceful face. The caption read, "Your view is definitely better than Toronto's." Christopher smiled, then immediately sobered as he remembered why she'd left Toronto in the first place. David Lancaster was still out there, probably comfortable in his perfect family life while Chloe pieced herself back together. The light turned green, and Christopher pressed the accelerator, perhaps harder than necessary. He had resources, connections. It would be easy to find out exactly what kind of man Lancaster was, to ensure he never came near Chloe or Olivia again. But that wasn't what Chloe needed from him right now. She needed stability, safety, and time to heal. She needed her best friend, not a knight in shining armor or an avenging angel. So Christopher would wait. He'd been in love with Chloe Adams for 24 years. He could handle loving her silently for a while longer. But as he pulled into his reserved parking space at Turner Technologies headquarters, Christopher couldn't shake the feeling that everything was about to change. Whether that change would heal or destroy the most important relationship in his life remained to be seen. For now, he had a board meeting to attend, and somewhere in his mansion, Chloe was beginning to feel at home. It would have to be enough. 2 weeks had transformed Christopher's mansion from a pristine showcase into something altogether different. Baby toys dotted the living room floor, a playmat sprawled beneath the grand window overlooking the bay, and the sterile silence had been replaced by Olivia's gurgles and Chloe's laughter. Christopher stood in the doorway of his home office, conference call forgotten as he watched Chloe crawl across the floor, making silly faces at Olivia. The baby squealed with delight, tiny hands reaching for her mother's hair. "Mr. Turner, your thoughts on the proposal?" The voice in his earpiece snapped him back to reality. "The terms need revision," he said smoothly, forcing his attention back to the spreadsheets on his desk. "Send me the updated numbers by end of day." He ended the call, but remained at his desk, trying to focus on work instead of the domestic scene unfolding in his living room. It was becoming a daily challenge, one that only grew harder as Chloe and Olivia settled into their new life here. "Earth to Christopher." Chloe's voice made him look up. She stood in his office doorway, Olivia propped on her hip. "Maria insists you haven't eaten lunch yet." "I had a protein bar," he protested weakly. "That doesn't count and you know it." Chloe crossed the room, perching on the edge of his desk like she used to do in his college dorm room. Come eat with us. Whatever crisis Turner Technologies is facing can wait 30 minutes. The familiar gesture, so casual and intimate, made his heart stutter. Chloe, please? She adjusted Olivia's position, and the baby immediately reached for Christopher's laptop. Your goddaughter demands quality time with her favorite billionaire. The word goddaughter caught him off guard. When did that happen? About 10 seconds ago, when I decided you needed an official title. Chloe's smile faltered slightly. Unless you don't want. I want, Christopher said quickly, perhaps too quickly. I'm honored. Olivia chose that moment to make a successful grab for his tie, tugging with surprising strength. Christopher laughed, carefully extracting the silk from her tiny fist. She's got quite a grip. She knows what she wants, Chloe said softly, something unreadable in her expression. Come on, Maria made that pasta you love. Resistance was futile. Christopher found himself following them to the kitchen, where Maria had indeed prepared his favorite pasta, a recipe she'd refused to share even after 20 years of service. You work too hard, the housekeeper scolded, setting a generous portion in front of him. A man needs proper food, not those protein bars. See? Chloe smirked. Maria agrees with me. Christopher watched as she settled Olivia into the high chair he'd ordered last week. The baby immediately began exploring the soft toys attached to the tray, completely focused on her task. How was the interview? He asked, remembering Chloe's video call with the online education platform that morning. A genuine smile lit up her face. They offered me the position. Curriculum development for their advanced placement programs, all remote work. I can start next week. Chloe, that's fantastic. The pride in his voice was entirely genuine. I told you they'd be impressed. You did more than tell me, she said, her expression turning serious. Chris, I know you must have. I made one phone call, he interrupted firmly. Everything else, the interview, the sample lesson plans, the teaching philosophy, that was all you. You earned this. Chloe blinked rapidly, and Christopher pretended not to notice the tears in her eyes. They ate in comfortable silence for a few minutes, broken only by Olivia's happy babbling. I got another email from him, Chloe said suddenly, her voice so quiet Christopher almost missed it. The fork froze halfway to his mouth. David? She nodded, not meeting his eyes. He says he wants to talk. That he's sorry for everything. Christopher's jaw clenched. And what do you want? I want. Chloe trailed off, watching Olivia play with her toys. I want him to disappear. I want to stop jumping every time my phone buzzes. I want to stop wondering if I'm making a huge mistake by letting Olivia grow up without knowing her father. A father who abandoned her? Who hurt you? The words came out sharper than Christopher intended. He forced himself to take a breath, to soften his tone. You don't owe him anything, Chloe. Don't I? She finally looked at him, and the pain in her eyes made his chest ache. He's her biological father. What if she grows up hating me for keeping her from him? Or what if she grows up knowing her mother was strong enough to protect her, to show her that love shouldn't come with conditions or cruelty? Chloe's breath caught. For a moment, they just stared at each other across the kitchen table, the weight of unspoken words hanging between them. I should get her down for her nap, Chloe said finally, standing to lift Olivia from the high chair. The baby immediately snuggled into her neck, tiny fingers curling into her mother's shirt. Christopher watched them go, feeling the familiar mix of love and frustration that had become his constant companion. Every instinct screamed at him to tell her the truth, about his feelings, about the private investigator he'd hired to look into David Lancaster's background, about the security team he'd quietly put in place to monitor the property. But Chloe needed to feel in control of her own life right now. The last thing she needed was another man making decisions for her, no matter how well-intentioned. His phone buzzed, an email from the investigator. Christopher opened it, scanning the contents with growing unease. David Lancaster's perfect facade was starting to crack. There were complaints from other women, quickly buried by expensive lawyers. Financial irregularities that suggested a gambling problem. A pattern of behavior that pointed to a man who viewed women as conquests rather than people. The sound of Chloe's laughter drifted down from upstairs, followed by the familiar notes of her lullaby. Christopher closed the email, his decision made. He wouldn't tell her about the investigation, not yet. But he would be ready when Lancaster inevitably tried to cause trouble. The afternoon sun cast long shadows across his desk as Christopher returned to work. He had 3 merger proposals to review, a board presentation to finalize, and countless emails demanding his attention. But his mind kept drifting to the way Chloe had perched on his desk, so naturally, as if no time had passed since their college days. 24 years of friendship. 24 years of loving her in silence. How much longer could he maintain the careful distance between them, especially now that she lived under his roof? A soft knock at his office door made him look up. Chloe stood there without Olivia this time, looking uncertain. "She's asleep," she said, answering his unspoken question. I was wondering if we could talk." Christopher's heart skipped a beat. Always. She stepped into the office, closing the door behind her. The click of the latch seemed unusually loud in the quiet room. "I need to know something," Chloe said, her voice steady despite the tension in her shoulders. "And I need you to be completely honest with me." Christopher nodded, unable to trust his voice. "Did you really just make one phone call about that job? Or are they hiring me because you're planning to invest in their platform?" The question wasn't what he'd expected, but the fear behind it was familiar. David Lancaster had systematically destroyed her confidence, made her doubt her own worth. "I made one call," Christopher said firmly, "to tell them they'd be idiots not to at least interview you. Everything else, your qualifications, your experience, your brilliant ideas for their curriculum, that was all you, Chloe. I wouldn't insult you by buying you a job." She studied his face for a long moment, searching for any sign of deception. Whatever she saw must have satisfied her, because some of the tension left her shoulders. "Okay," she whispered. "Thank you. You never have to thank me for telling the truth." Chloe smiled, but it didn't quite reach her eyes. "When did you get so wise?" "Probably around the time you taught me that the answers to Mrs. Henderson's history tests were hidden in the chapter summaries." That earned him a real laugh, bright and unexpected. "God, I'd forgotten about that. We were so young." "We were brilliant," Christopher corrected. "Still are." Their eyes met across the office, and for a moment Christopher could swear he saw something flicker in Chloe's expression, something that made his pulse race and his carefully maintained control waver. Then Olivia's cry echoed through the baby monitor, and the moment shattered. "I should..." Chloe gestured vaguely toward the door. "Go." Christopher nodded. "I'll see you at dinner?" "Always," she echoed his earlier response, and then she was gone, leaving Christopher alone with the weight of everything he couldn't say. The annual Turner Technologies Charity Gala was the kind of event that made headlines in the Bay Area's social circles. This year's venue, the prestigious St. Regis Hotel, sparkled with crystal chandeliers and the flash of photographers' cameras. Christopher adjusted his bow tie, scanning the crowded ballroom with practiced ease. "Mr. Turner." A reporter waved from behind the velvet rope. "Any comment on the rumors about the Henderson merger?" Christopher offered his media smile, confident but unrevealing. "Turner Technologies is always exploring opportunities for growth. That's all I can say for now." Inside, his thoughts were elsewhere, specifically in his home office, where he'd left Chloe working on her curriculum development project. She'd insisted he attend the gala, claiming she had too much work to do anyway. But he'd seen the shadow in her eyes when she looked at the invitation. "Christopher, darling." Regina Whitmore, one of his major investors, air-kissed his cheeks. "You simply must meet my niece. She's just finished her MBA at Stanford." He let himself be pulled into the familiar dance of networking and small talk, all while his phone burned in his pocket. He'd promised Chloe he'd check in even though Maria was there with her. "Your usual table is ready, Mr. Turner." The event coordinator appeared at his elbow. "Although," she hesitated, "there seems to be some confusion about your +1. Christopher frowned. "I didn't register a +1 this year." "Oh?" Regina's perfectly shaped eyebrows rose. "But I just saw the most striking young woman being seated at your table, blonde, wearing emerald green." His heart stopped. Moving with careful control, Christopher excused himself and made his way toward his usual table near the stage. The crowd parted, and there she was, Chloe, in a stunning emerald dress that made her eyes look like summer leaves. Their eyes met across the room, and Christopher forgot how to breathe. Then he saw who was standing next to her table. David Lancaster, in an impeccably tailored tuxedo, was leaning close to Chloe's chair. Even from a distance, Christopher could see the tension in her shoulders, the way her fingers gripped her water glass. Rage, cold and precise, flooded Christopher's veins. He crossed the room in long strides, cataloging every detail with crystal clarity. The way Lancaster's hand rested possessively on the back of Chloe's chair, the forced politeness in her smile, the curious glances from nearby tables. "I believe you're in my seat." Christopher's voice was arctic as he reached them. Without waiting for a response, he placed himself between Lancaster and Chloe. "Turner." Lancaster's smile was all teeth. "I was just catching up with an old friend. You've been keeping her quite hidden away, haven't you?" "Chris." Chloe's hand found, his arm trembling slightly. "I'm sorry. I should have told you I was coming, but Maria insisted I needed a night out, and then—" "Don't apologize." Christopher covered her hand with his, feeling her pulse racing beneath his fingers. "You belong here." He turned to Lancaster, letting every bit of his boardroom authority fill his voice. "You, however, do not." Lancaster's smile didn't waver. "Come now, surely we can be civilized. After all, I have a vested interest in—" "The only thing you have," Christopher cut in smoothly, "is about 30 seconds before security escorts you out. Your choice whether it's quietly or not." As if on cue, 2 suited men appeared at Lancaster's elbows. Christopher's head of security had clearly been paying attention. Lancaster's facade cracked just for a moment. Something ugly flashed in his eyes as he looked at Chloe. "This isn't over. She knows that." "Yes, it is." Christopher stepped closer, his voice pitched for Lancaster's ears alone. "I know about the others, the lawsuits you buried, the gambling debts. Leave her alone, or every skeleton in your closet becomes front-page news." "Courtier dies," drained from Lancaster's face. Without another word, he turned and walked away, the security team close behind. Christopher waited until Lancaster was gone before turning to Chloe. She was pale beneath her makeup, but her chin was raised defiantly. "I'm not running away," she said before he could speak. "I won't let him chase me out of here." Pride and worry warred in Christopher's chest. "I wouldn't expect anything less." He sat beside her, keeping his voice gentle. "Want to tell me what happened?" Chloe took a shaky breath. "Maria practically pushed me out the door, saying I needed adult conversation that didn't involve baby supplies or curriculum planning. Olivia's asleep and Maria promised to stay with her." She twisted her napkin in her fingers. I thought I could handle being in the world again. Then he was just there." "How did he know about the gala?" "It was in the business news." Chloe's laugh was bitter. "He said he's been following your career very closely since he found out where I was staying. Said he wanted to discuss arrangements about Olivia." Christopher's jaw clenched. "You don't owe him anything." "I know that. Logically, I know that." Chloe's eyes met his, vulnerable and fierce at once. But seeing him here, looking so perfect, so sure of himself, for a moment I felt like that scared, stupid woman who believed all his lies. "Hey." Christopher turned in his chair to face her fully, not caring who might be watching. "You were never stupid. He's a professional manipulator who's done this to other women. The only difference is you were strong enough to get away." Tears gathered in her eyes, but she blinked them back. "You investigated him." It wasn't a question. Christopher nodded, not bothering to deny it. "I needed to know what we were dealing with." "We? You're not alone anymore, Chloe." He squeezed her hand gently. "You never have to be alone again." Something shifted in her expression. Surprise, wonder, and something else he couldn't quite read. The orchestra began playing, the smooth notes of a waltz filling the ballroom. "Dance with me?" The words left Christopher's mouth before he could think better of them. Chloe hesitated. "Everyone's watching. Let them." He stood, offering his hand. "Show them you're not afraid." For a long moment, she just looked at his outstretched hand. Then, with a grace that took his breath away, she stood. The emerald dress shimmered in the chandelier light as she placed her hand in his. Christopher led her to the dance floor, acutely aware of the eyes following them. When he drew her into his arms, the familiar steps of the waltz feeling anything but routine, Chloe was trembling slightly. "Just look at me," he murmured, guiding her through the first turn. "Forget everyone else." She did, her eyes finding his as they moved together. Gradually, the tension left her shoulders, replaced by the natural rhythm they'd always shared. "I forgot you could dance," she said softly. "Mandatory lesson since childhood," he reminded her. "Mom insisted. I remember. You used to practice with me in your parents' living room." A real smile touched her lips. "You were terrible at first. I got better." "Yes," she whispered, something new in her voice. "You did." The music swelled around them, and Christopher allowed himself one moment of weakness. He pulled her slightly closer, letting himself imagine this was real, that she was in his arms because she wanted to be, not because she needed his protection. "Chris?" Her voice was barely audible over the orchestra. "Thank you for everything." He wanted to tell her then, about the decades of love he'd carried silently, about how seeing her with Lancaster made him want to tear the world apart, about how every morning watching her with Olivia, he fell a little more in love with both of them. Instead, he said, "Always." The dance ended too soon. As they walked back to their table, Christopher noticed the speculative glances, the whispered conversations. By tomorrow, the gossip columns would be full of theories about his relationship with the mysterious blonde in green. Let them talk. He'd weather any storm of publicity if it meant keeping Chloe and Olivia safe. But as they finished their dinner, making casual conversation about safer topics, Christopher couldn't shake the feeling that Lancaster's appearance wasn't a coincidence. The man had planned this, had wanted to send a message. Well, message received. But if Lancaster thought he could intimidate his way back into Chloe's life, he was about to learn exactly why Christopher Turner was considered one of the most formidable CEOs in Silicon Valley. The war had begun, and Christopher intended to win. The morning after the gala dawned gray and misty, matching Christopher's mood as he scrolled through the headlines on his tablet. Turner Technologies, CEO's mystery woman. Silicon Valley's most eligible bachelor off the market? Who is the blonde in green who captured Christopher Turner's heart? Each article featured photos of him dancing with Chloe, speculating about their relationship. Some even had shots of the confrontation with Lancaster, though thankfully none seemed to know the true nature of that encounter. "You're going to wear out that screen," Chloe's voice made him look up. She stood in the kitchen doorway, Olivia balanced on her hip, both still in their pajamas. The sight made his heart ache with longing. "The PR team is handling it," he said, setting the tablet aside. "How did you sleep?" "Better than expected." She settled Olivia in her high chair, efficiently securing the straps. "Though I kept thinking about what you said to David, about the other women." Christopher watched her prepare Olivia's breakfast, noting the subtle tremor in her hands. "You want to know more?" "I need to know." She turned to face him, her green eyes fierce. All of it. He nodded slowly. Let me get the file. While Chloe fed Olivia her morning porridge, Christopher retrieved the investigation reports from his office safe. He'd memorized every detail, every damning piece of evidence about the man who had nearly destroyed her. When he returned to the kitchen, Maria was there, cooing over Olivia while preparing breakfast for the adults. She took one look at the manila folder in Christopher's hands and quietly excused herself, taking the baby for her morning routine. 5 women, Christopher began once they were alone, spreading the documents across the kitchen table. All teachers or administrators at different schools where he had children enrolled. All single mothers or recently divorced. All told the same story. He approached them during parent-teacher conferences, claimed to be separated or divorcing, promised them the world. Chloe's hands were steady now as she picked up the first report. What happened to them? When they discovered the truth, he threatened them. Used his connections to get them fired, to ruin their reputations. 2 of them tried to sue, but his lawyers buried the cases. The others were paid off. And his wife? Christopher hesitated. This was the part that would hurt the most. She knows, has known for years. She helps him cover it up. Her family's money and influence protect him. Chloe closed her eyes, pain etching lines around her mouth. She's complicit. Yes. Why? The word was barely a whisper. Why would she? Power, Christopher said quietly. Her family's empire depends on the illusion of a perfect marriage. And Lancaster feeds on that power, uses it to prey on women he sees as beneath him socially. Like me. Chloe's laugh was hollow. God, I was such an easy target. Single teacher, no family connections, desperate for someone to see me as more than just, stop. Christopher reached across the table, taking her hands in his. You are not beneath anyone. You're brilliant, strong, and more capable than he could ever understand. She looked down at their joined hands. You've always seen the best in me. I've always seen you, he corrected. The real you. Not the version Lancaster tried to break. Something shifted in her expression. Surprise, maybe recognition. But before she could respond, Christopher's phone buzzed with an urgent message from his legal team. What is it? Chloe asked, seeing his jaw clench. Lancaster's wife. He showed her the message. She's requesting a meeting. Today. Why? Probably to negotiate some kind of agreement about Olivia. Christopher's voice was carefully neutral. But you don't have to. I'll go. Chloe straightened in her chair, chin lifting. I want to look her in the eye. Both of them. Chloe. I need to do this, Chris. Her fingers tightened around his. But will you be there? Every step of the way. 3 hours later, they sat in the conference room at Turner Technologies headquarters. Christopher had chosen this location deliberately. His territory, his rules. When Lancaster and his wife arrived, they would face him on equal corporate footing. Chloe wore one of her new work outfits, a sleek navy dress that made her look every inch the professional educator she was, but Christopher could see the tension in her shoulders as she paced near the floor-to-ceiling windows. They're here. His assistant's voice came through the intercom. Chloe took a deep breath, squaring her shoulders. Christopher moved to stand, beside her, close enough to offer support without touching. The conference room door opened and David Lancaster strode in, his wife a perfectly coiffed presence at his side. Amelia Lancaster was exactly as her photos suggested, elegant, cold, and utterly in control. Ms. Adams, Amelia's voice could have frozen San Francisco Bay. How kind of you to meet with us. Chloe didn't flinch. I assume this is about Olivia. This is about making certain arrangements that benefit everyone. Lancaster started, but Christopher cut him off. If you're here to threaten or manipulate her, this meeting is over. Amelia's perfect smile didn't waver. Not at all. We're here to offer a solution. She opened her designer handbag, removing a thick envelope. $1 million in exchange for severing all ties between David and the child. No contact, no claims, complete anonymity. The room went very still. Christopher felt rather, then saw Chloe's sharp intake of breath. "You want to buy my silence," Chloe said slowly. "To protect your reputation." "To protect everyone," Amelia corrected. "Surely you understand that this situation could be damaging to all parties. Our children, your daughter, our respective positions in society." "Society?" Chloe's laugh was unexpected and bitter. "You mean your carefully constructed lie? The perfect family image that lets him prey on other women while you look the other way?" Color touched Amelia's cheeks. "You don't understand." "I understand perfectly." Chloe's voice was steel. "You think money can erase what he did? To me? To the others?" Lancaster's facade cracked. "Be careful, Chloe. You're not the only one who can make accusations." "Are you threatening her?" Christopher's quiet question carried more menace than a shout. "Simply stating facts," Lancaster smiled, all teeth. "After all, who would believe the gold-digging teacher who seduced a married man? Especially now that she's living with another wealthy businessman." Christopher started forward, but Chloe's hand on his arm stopped him. "You're right," she said calmly. "Who would believe me alone? But what about the others? What about Rebecca Chen, who lost her job at Westbrook Academy? Or Michelle Torres, who had to move states to escape your harassment? What about all the women who took your money and signed your NDAs?" The blood drained from Lancaster's face. Beside him, Amelia's perfect composure slipped. "Here's what's going to happen," Chloe continued, her voice steady. "You're going to leave. You're going to stay away from me, from Olivia, from any other woman you might see as an easy target. Because if you don't, every single one of your victims will learn that they're not alone. And I promise you, David, there's not enough money in your wife's family to bury that many voices." Silence fell over the conference room. Christopher watched Lancaster's hands clench into fists, saw the muscle jumping in his jaw. "You'll regret this," he spat. "No," Chloe smiled, and for the first time since Christopher had known her, it was a smile entirely without fear. "I won't." Amelia stood, gathering her designer bag with trembling hands. "David, we're leaving." Lancaster allowed himself to be led to the door, but he paused on the threshold. "This isn't over." "Yes, it is." Christopher's voice was quiet but implacable. "Remember what I told you at the gala. Every skeleton, every victim, every dirty secret, it all comes out if you so much as look in their direction again." The door closed behind them with a decisive click. For a moment, neither Christopher nor Chloe moved. Then, without warning, Chloe's legs gave out. Christopher caught her before she could fall, guiding her to the nearest chair. "Breathe," he murmured, kneeling beside her. "Just breathe." "Did I just, She looked at him, wonder and disbelief warring in her expression. "Did I really?" "You just stood up to your abuser and his enabler?" Christopher smiled. "Yes, you absolutely did, and it was magnificent." A laugh bubbled up from her chest, slightly hysterical, but genuine. I didn't know I could. I did." He tucked a strand of hair behind her ear, his touch gentle. "I've always known how strong you are." Their eyes met, and suddenly Christopher was acutely aware of how close they were, how his hand still rested against her cheek. Chloe's breath caught, and for a moment he thought she might lean forward. His phone buzzed, shattering the moment. Maria's text simply read, "Olivia's asking for her mama." Reality crashed back in. Chloe straightened, smoothing her dress with trembling hands. "We should get home." Home. The word made Christopher's heart twist. Yes, we should. But as they rode the elevator down to the parking garage, Christopher couldn't stop thinking about that moment of possibility. For just a second, he'd seen something in Chloe's eyes. something that looked remarkably like the feelings he'd been hiding for 24 years. Maybe, just maybe, it was time to stop hiding. The next few days passed in a strange blur of normalcy. Chloe threw herself into her new job, developing curriculum from Christopher's home office while he worked. From Turner Technologies, Olivia continued hitting her milestones, each new achievement celebrated by an increasingly devoted household. Even Maria seemed more cheerful than usual, humming as she prepared elaborate meals and doted on both mother and daughter. But beneath the surface, everything had changed. Christopher noticed it in small moments, the way Chloe held herself straighter, laughed more freely, met his eyes without hesitation. The shadow of David Lancaster was fading, replaced by something brighter, more confident. It terrified him, how much he loved watching her bloom. "You're staring again." Chloe's voice pulled him from his thoughts. They sat in the garden enjoying a rare sunny afternoon. Olivia was attempting to crawl across her playmat, determined to reach a colorful toy just beyond her grasp. "Sorry." Christopher smiled, not really sorry at all. "Just thinking." "About?" "How different you seem since the meeting with Lancaster." Chloe's hands stilled on her laptop keyboard. She'd been reviewing student submissions from her online platform, but now her focus shifted entirely to him. "I feel different," she admitted. "Like I've been carrying this weight for so long I forgot what it was like to stand up straight." She glanced at Olivia, who had finally reached her target and was celebrating with happy babbles. Seeing him there, with his perfect wife and their perfect lies, it should have scared me. Instead, it made me angry. "Anger can be powerful," Christopher observed, watching her face, "when it's channeled correctly." "Is that what you did?" Her question caught him off guard. "Channeled your anger into protecting me?" The directness in her gaze made his heart skip. "What do you mean?" "Chris." She set her laptop aside, turning to face him fully. "You investigated him, set up security, created a safety net I didn't even know I needed. Why?" "Because I love you," he wanted to say. "Because I've loved you for 24 years and watching him hurt you nearly destroyed me." Instead, he said, "Your family." Something flickered in her eyes. Disappointment? Frustration? Before he could analyze it, Olivia chose that moment to roll onto her stomach, an entirely new feat that demanded their attention. "Look at you." Chloe scooped up her daughter, pressing kisses to her chubby cheeks. "You're getting so strong. Sweetheart." Christopher watched them together, his chest tight with longing. Over the past months, he'd fallen hopelessly in love with this tiny person who shared Chloe's determination. The fact that Olivia had Lancaster's blue eyes no longer mattered. She was entirely her mother's daughter in all the ways that counted. "She's going to be crawling properly soon," Chloe said, setting Olivia back on her mat. "We should probably start baby-proofing." "Already done," Christopher admitted. "The team finished yesterday while you were on your video conference." Chloe stared at him. "You baby-proofed your entire mansion?" "Well, not the whole thing. Just the main areas where Olivia might—" He trailed off, seeing the expression on her face. "What?" "You keep doing these things," she said softly. "These enormous, thoughtful things and acting like they're nothing." "They are nothing," he insisted, "compared to what you do every day, raising her, teaching, rebuilding your life. That's the real work." "Is that really how you see it?" Chloe's voice held an edge he didn't quite understand. "That everything you do for us is nothing?" Warning bells rang in Christopher's head. This conversation was veering into dangerous territory, too close to feelings he couldn't express, truths he wasn't ready to face. His phone buzzed, offering a temporary escape. "I have a board call in 10 minutes, he said, standing. "Will you be okay out here?" "We'll be fine." Chloe's tone was carefully neutral. "We always are." The words followed him into his office, echoing in his mind as he tried to focus on quarterly projections and market analyses. "We'll be fine. We always are." But were they? The threat of Lancaster might be neutralized, but Christopher couldn't shake the feeling that something else was building between them, something that could either heal or destroy 2 decades of friendship. The board call dragged on for hours, complex, negotiations requiring his full attention. By the time he emerged from his office, the sun had set, casting long shadows across the garden where he'd left Chloe and Olivia. He found them in the kitchen, where Maria was teaching Chloe her secret pasta recipe. The scene was so domestic, so perfect it made his throat tight. "Finally escaped?" Chloe teased, looking up from the sauce she was stirring. There was a smudge of flour on her cheek, and Christopher's fingers itched to brush it away. "Barely," he managed. "What's all this?" "Maria decided it was time I learned to cook properly," Chloe explained. "Apparently my reliance on takeout offends her Italian soul." "It's true," Maria nodded solemnly, but her eyes twinkled. "A mother must feed her family with love." The word family hung in the air, heavy with implications. Christopher watched as Chloe's cheeks flushed slightly, her focus returning to the sauce with unnecessary intensity. "Speaking of family," she said after a moment, "my students' parents are organizing an end-of-unit celebration next week. Virtual, of course, but would you like to see what I've been working on?" The invitation surprised him. Chloe had kept her work life carefully, separate until now, perhaps trying to prove she could succeed without his help. "I'd love to," he said honestly. Her smile lit up the kitchen. "Really? It's just a small thing, teaching literature to advanced placement students, nothing like your tech empire." "Chloe." He stepped closer, finally giving in to the urge to brush the flour from her cheek. "Everything you do matters. I want to know all of it." She went very still under his touch, her eyes wide. For a heartbeat, Christopher thought he'd crossed a line, revealed too much of what he felt. Then Olivia's happy shriek broke the moment. The baby had discovered she could bang her spoon against her high chair tray, creating a rhythm that delighted her and made Maria wince. "I'll get her," Christopher offered, grateful for the distraction. As he lifted Olivia from her chair, she immediately grabbed for his tie, a familiar game that never failed to make him laugh. "She's got you wrapped around her little finger," Chloe observed, watching them with an unreadable expression. "You both do," Christopher thought. Instead, he said, "She's a very persuasive negotiator. Must get that from her mother." "Must be," Chloe echoed softly. Then, more brightly, "Dinner's almost ready. Why don't you two set the table while Maria teaches me the secret to perfect garlic bread?" Later that night, after Olivia was asleep, and Chloe had retired to the guest house, Christopher stood at his bedroom window. The lights in Chloe's space glowed warmly through the garden darkness, a beacon he couldn't help but watch. His phone buzzed with a text from his head of security. All clear. No sign of Lancaster or his people. Christopher replied with a brief acknowledgement, but his mind was elsewhere. The threat of Lancaster felt distant now, overshadowed by a more immediate danger. His own heart, threatening to betray every careful boundary he'd built. How much longer could he maintain this delicate balance? How many more domestic moments could he witness without breaking? How many more times could he touch her casually, pretending it didn't set his soul on fire? A movement in the guest house caught his eye. Chloe stood at her own window, looking out at the bay. The distance between them felt both infinite and microscopic. 24 years of friendship. 24 years of silent love. 24 years of choosing safety over truth. But watching her today, facing down her demons with fierce courage, Christopher had realized something. Maybe safety wasn't worth the cost of silence. Maybe some risks were worth taking, some truths worth speaking. Maybe it was time to be as brave as she was. His phone buzzed again, Chloe this time. "Thank you for today, for everything." Christopher stared at the message, feeling the weight of unspoken words between them. Finally, he typed, "Always." It wasn't enough. It wasn't nearly enough. But soon, he promised himself. Soon he would find the courage to tell her everything. The question was, would she be ready to hear it? The headlines hit early Monday morning. Tech billionaire's secret love child scandal. Turner Technologies CEO harboring mistress and illegitimate child. David Lancaster's wife speaks out. The truth about Christopher Turner's mystery woman. Christopher's phone hadn't stopped ringing since dawn. His PR team was in crisis mode. His board members demanding explanations, and social media was exploding with speculation. But none of that mattered compared to the devastation on Chloe's face as she read the articles. "They're calling her illegitimate," she whispered, her voice breaking. "They're saying I'm that we're." "It's Lancaster," Christopher said grimly, pacing his home office. He couldn't resist one last attack. The stories were carefully crafted lies, mixing just enough truth with speculation to seem plausible. Yes, Chloe lived in Christopher's guest house. Yes, she had a baby. But the articles painted her as a calculating seductress who had trapped first Lancaster, then Turner, spinning a web of manipulation and deceit. Worst of all, they'd somehow obtained photos. Chloe entering the guest house late at night. Christopher holding Olivia. Intimate moments that had been twisted into something sordid. "My students' parents will see this." Chloe's hands shook as she set down her tablet. "The school board, my colleagues. Everything I've built. We'll fix it." Christopher knelt beside her chair, taking her trembling hands in his. "I promise you, Chloe. We'll make this right." "How?" She pulled away, standing abruptly. "How do we fight this? He's turned our entire life into some cheap scandal. He's made everything look dirty." The pain in her voice cut through Christopher like a knife. "We tell the truth." "The truth?" Chloe laughed bitterly. "That I was stupid enough to believe a married man's lies? That I'm living off my best friend's charity while trying to raise his child? That you're the strongest person I know," Christopher interrupted. "That you escaped an abuser and built a new life for your daughter. That everything they're trying to twist into something shameful is actually a story of courage and survival." Chloe stared at him, tears gathering in her eyes. "Why are you doing this? Really? Why are you fighting so hard for us?" The question hung in the air between them, heavy with 2 decades of unspoken feelings. Christopher's heart hammered against his ribs as he realized this was the moment, the precipice he'd been approaching for 24 years. But before he could speak, Maria burst into the office, her face pale. "You need to see this." She handed Christopher her phone where a new article was loading. His blood ran cold as he read the headline. "Exclusive. David Lancaster seeks custody of daughter, cites unstable living situation." "No," Chloe's voice was barely audible. "He can't. He signed away his rights." "He's claiming coercion, Christopher." Read through the article quickly. Rage building with each word. Says he was pressured into giving up his parental rights. That he's concerned about Olivia's welfare given the inappropriate relationship between you and me. "He's lying," Chloe's composure finally shattered. "He never wanted her. He told me we were worthless to him." "I know," Christopher reached for her, but she backed away. "This is my fault," she said, wrapping her arms around herself. "I should never have come here. I should have known he wouldn't let me go, that he'd find a way to destroy everything good in my life." "Chloe, please. I have to get Olivia. We need to leave before—" "No." Christopher's voice cracked like thunder in the quiet office. "You're not running. Not this time. Chris, listen to me." He crossed the space between them in 2 strides, catching her shoulders gently but firmly. "Lancaster wants you to run. He wants you scared and isolated because that's the only way he can control you. But you're not alone anymore, Chloe. You have me. You've always had me." She looked up at him, really looked, and something shifted in her expression. "What are you saying?" Christopher took a deep breath, 24 years of careful control crumbling in the face of her need to understand. "I'm saying I love you. I've loved you since we were kids, building sandcastles and sharing dreams. I loved you through college, through every relationship that wasn't quite right because they weren't you. I loved you when you moved to Toronto, when you stopped calling, when you showed up on my doorstep with Olivia. I love both of you, and I'm done pretending I don't." Silence fell over the office. Even Maria, who had been quietly trying to leave, froze by the door. You? Chloe's voice shook. All this time? Every minute, Christopher admitted. But you needed a friend, not another man trying to complicate your life. So I kept quiet, told myself it was enough to have you here to help you heal. But now I'm telling you the truth. Because you need to understand why I won't let Lancaster destroy what we have. This isn't charity, Chloe. This is family. This is love. This is everything I've ever wanted. Tears spilled down Chloe's cheeks. I convinced myself I was imagining things. The way you look at me sometimes, how you are with Olivia. I told myself it was just friendship, that no one could possibly want everything. Christopher finished for her. I want everything, Chloe. If you'll let me. She swayed slightly, and this time when he reached for her, she fell into his arms. The familiar scent of her shampoo, the warmth of her body against his. It felt like coming home. I'm scared, she whispered against his chest. I know. Not of Lancaster, she clarified, pulling back just enough to meet his eyes. Of this. Of ruining what we have. Of losing you if... You won't lose me, Christopher promised. No matter what happens next, you will never lose me. A baby's cry from the monitor interrupted the moment. Olivia had woken from her nap, blissfully unaware of the emotions swirling around her. Chloe gestured vaguely toward the door. We should, Christopher corrected gently. Together. She nodded, wiping her eyes. Together. As they walked to the nursery, Christopher's phone buzzed again. His PR team, no doubt with more fires to put out. But for now, none of that mattered. He'd finally said the words he'd been holding back for 2 decades, and Chloe was still here, still walking beside him. The war with Lancaster wasn't over. There would be legal battles, public relations nightmares, and countless challenges ahead. But for the first time, they were facing it all with complete honesty between them. In the nursery, Olivia's face lit up when she saw them both. Her tiny arms reached up, asking to be held, and without discussion, Christopher lifted her while Chloe checked her diaper. We make a good team, Chloe said softly, watching him with their goddaughter. We always have, Christopher replied. We always will. The morning sun streamed through the nursery windows, painting everything in gold. Outside, the world was chaos of headlines and accusations. But in here, in this moment, everything felt possible. They had truth now. They had love. The rest, they would face together. 3 days after the media explosion, Christopher's legal team gathered in his home office. 5 of San Francisco's top lawyers sat around his conference table, surrounded by papers and laptops. But Christopher's attention kept drifting to the garden, where Chloe sat with Olivia, deliberately avoiding the meeting. Mr. Turner, Andrea, Chen, his lead counsel, cleared her throat. About the custody filing. Right. He forced his focus back to the matter at hand. What are our options? Lancaster's case is weak, Andrea assured him. He voluntarily terminated his parental rights. The fact that he's only pursuing custody now after Ms. Adams refused his wife's financial offer suggests retaliation rather than genuine concern for the child's welfare. But, Christopher recognized the hesitation in her voice. But he's painting a compelling narrative for the media. The repentant father, the confused young mother possibly being manipulated by a powerful billionaire. She spread several tabloid headlines across the table. Public opinion matters in family court. So we fight back, Christopher stated firmly. Release the evidence about his pattern of abuse, the other women. That could backfire, another lawyer interrupted. Lancaster's legal team would argue that Ms. Adams is attempting to destroy his reputation out of spite. They'd paint her as vindictive, unstable. Christopher's jaw clenched. Everything about this situation felt wrong. Using Olivia as a weapon, twisting Chloe's strength into something ugly, reducing their complex reality into sensational headlines. What about a different approach? Andrea suggested carefully. One that could solve multiple problems at once? I'm listening. Marriage. The word fell like a bomb in the quiet office. If you and Ms. Adams were to marry, it would provide immediate stability in the eyes of the court. Lancaster's claims about an inappropriate living situation would become moot. Plus, your reputation as a respected CEO would... No. Christopher's voice was steel. I won't manipulate Chloe into marriage just to win a legal battle. Even if it's her best chance of keeping her daughter? Before Christopher could respond, a soft voice came from the doorway. Don't I get a say in this? Everyone turned. To find Chloe standing there, Olivia balanced on her hip. The baby was chewing contentedly on a teething ring, oblivious to the tension in the room. How long have you been there? Christopher asked, already moving toward her. Long enough. She met his eyes steadily. We need to talk, privately. The lawyers quickly gathered their materials, filing out with practiced discretion. Andrea paused at the door, looking between them. We'll need a decision soon. Lancaster's preliminary hearing is in 3 days. Once they were alone, Chloe set Olivia on her playmat in the corner of the office. The baby immediately became absorbed in her toys, babbling happily to herself. Chloe, Christopher started, but she held up a hand. Let me say this first. She took a deep breath, squaring her shoulders. 3 days ago, you told me you loved me, that you've loved me for 24 years. I meant it. I know you did. A small smile touched her lips. That's why we can't get married. Christopher felt his heart stutter. What? Not like this, she clarified. Not as a legal strategy, not because David Lancaster is trying to take my daughter. She stepped closer, close enough that he could see the gold flecks in her green eyes. If we get married, it will be because we both want it. Because we've had time to figure out what this is between us. Because we're choosing each other, not being forced together by circumstances. Relief and love flooded Christopher's chest. When, he said softly. Not if. Chloe's cheeks flushed, but she didn't look away. When? But first we fight Lancaster, the right way, with the truth. The lawyers are thinking like lawyers, she interrupted. But I'm done hiding, done letting him control the narrative. She glanced at Olivia, who had managed to roll onto her stomach and was attempting to crawl toward them. I want my daughter to grow up knowing her mother fought for her with honesty and courage, not legal tricks. Christopher watched as she scooped up Olivia, pressing a kiss to the baby's soft hair. In that moment, he fell in love with her all over again. Okay, he said. What's your plan? We go public. All of it. His pattern of abuse, the other women, the attempted payoff. But we also tell our story. The real story. She met his eyes. Including how you've loved me all this time, how you've helped us heal, how we're building something real and honest and beautiful. Are you sure? Once it's out there, I'm sure. Her voice was steady. I'm done letting shame and fear dictate my choices. Besides, a hint of mischief touched her smile. Imagine Lancaster's face when he realizes his attempt to destroy us only made us stronger. Christopher couldn't help but laugh. This was the Chloe he'd fallen in love with. Fierce, brilliant, unstoppable when she set her mind to something. Maria, he called, knowing the housekeeper was never far. When she appeared in the doorway, he said, Could you watch Olivia for a bit? We need to make some calls. The next few hours were a whirlwind of activity. They contacted Andrea, outlining their new strategy. They reached out to the other women Lancaster had victimized, finding surprising allies. They prepared statements for the press, drafted with brutal honesty and unwavering dignity. By sunset, everything was in motion. Their story would break. Tomorrow morning, not in tabloid headlines, but in a respected national newspaper known for its investigative journalism. Are you really ready for this? Christopher asked as they stood in the garden watching the sky turn purple over the bay. Once it's out there, everything changes. Chloe leaned against him, fitting perfectly under his arm. Everything's already changed. The moment you told me you loved me. The moment I realized I've probably loved you too for longer than I was ready to admit. Christopher's heart soared at her words. Yeah? Yeah. She tilted her face up to his. I was so broken. When I came here, so sure I didn't deserve love or happiness. But you never saw me as broken. You saw me as strong even when I couldn't see it myself. Because you are strong, he murmured, tucking a strand of hair behind her ear. The strongest person I know. Olivia's laughter drifted down from the nursery window where Maria was getting her ready for bed. The sound made them both smile. We should go up, Chloe said softly. Help with bedtime. Christopher nodded, but neither of them moved. This moment felt too precious to break, standing together in their garden on the eve of a battle they'd face side by side. I love you, he said, because he could now, because the words had waited 24 years to be spoken freely. Chloe's answer was to rise on her tiptoes and press her lips to his. The kiss was gentle, sweet, full of promise. When she pulled back, her eyes were shining. I love you too, she whispered. Now let's go put our daughter to bed. Our daughter. The words made Christopher's heart feel too big for his chest. Together, they walked back into their home, ready to face whatever tomorrow might bring. They had truth on their side now. They had love. They had everything they needed to win. The morning their story broke, Christopher and Chloe sat together in his home office watching the world react. The article had gone live at 6 a.m., a comprehensive expose that laid bare David Lancaster's history of manipulation and abuse, alongside the story of how Christopher and Chloe had found their way to each other. It's trending, Christopher noted, monitoring the social media response. Justice for Chloe is the top hashtag nationwide. Chloe nodded, her eyes fixed on a different screen. The other women, they're all coming forward, sharing their own stories. Her voice caught. I never thought. I felt so alone before. Christopher reached across his desk, taking her hand. You're not alone. You never will be again. The truth of their relationship had been met with unexpected public support. The media narrative had shifted overnight, from scandal to love story, from shame to triumph. Even Christopher's board of directors had sent a statement of unwavering support, impressed by his integrity in handling the situation. But the real victory came an hour later, when Andrea called with news from the courthouse. Lancaster withdrew the custody petition, she announced, her voice triumphant. His wife's family is in damage control mode. They're offering a formal apology and a legally binding agreement never to contest Chloe's parental rights again. Chloe's hands flew to her mouth, tears spilling down her cheeks. Christopher pulled her into his arms, feeling her body shake with relief. It's over, he murmured into her hair. He can't hurt you anymore. Not just me. She pulled back, wiping her eyes. Any of us. He'll never be able to do this to another woman. The sound of Olivia's morning babbles came through the baby monitor, followed by Maria's gentle cooing. Their daughter was awake, ready to start another day in a world that suddenly felt infinitely safer. I should get her, Chloe said, but Christopher stopped her with a gentle hand. Let Maria handle morning routine, he suggested. I want to show you something first. Curiosity sparked in Chloe's eyes as he led her through the house, up to the third floor where he kept his most private spaces. At the end of the hallway, he paused before a closed door. I've been working on this for a while, he admitted, suddenly nervous. Even before everything. I wanted it to be perfect. He opened the door, revealing what had once been his mother's sitting room. Now the space had been transformed into a study that mirrored his own office downstairs. But with distinctly feminine touches, a mahogany desk faced the bay windows, where the morning sun painted everything in gold. Bookshelves lined the walls, already filled with educational texts and classic literature. A comfortable reading nook occupied one corner, complete with a rocking chair perfect for storytelling. But it was the adjoining room that made Chloe gasp. Through French doors, she could see a fully equipped classroom space, smart boards, learning stations, and enough room for small group instruction. "Your virtual teaching has been so successful," Christopher explained quickly. "I thought, when you're ready, you might want to expand. Take on more students, maybe start your own educational consulting firm. You could run everything from here, be close to Olivia." "Chris," Chloe's voice was barely a whisper, "when did you do all this?" "I started the renovations the week after you arrived." He ran a hand through his hair, a nervous tell he'd never quite outgrown. "I know it might be too much too soon, but I wanted you to have a space that was entirely yours, somewhere you could build your dreams without depending on anyone else." Chloe walked slowly through the rooms, trailing her fingers along the desk, examining the carefully chosen details. When she turned back to him, her eyes were bright with tears. "You did this before you knew if I'd stay," she said, "before you told me how you felt." "I did it because I believed in you," he corrected. "Because I've always believed in you, Chloe. Whether you stayed or not, whether you ever loved me back, I wanted you to have the tools to build whatever future you chose." She crossed the room in quick steps, rising on her tiptoes to press her lips to his. Unlike their first kiss in the garden, this one held nothing back. Christopher pulled her closer, pouring 24 years of love into the way he cradled her face, the gentle sweep of his tongue against hers. When they finally parted, both breathing heavily, Chloe rested her forehead against his chest. "I choose you," she whispered. "I choose this future, with you and Olivia, and everything we can build together." The baby monitor crackled with their daughter's increasingly demanding sounds. Maria's voice came through, amused. "I think someone knows her parents are having a moment without her." They both laughed, the joy of the morning bubbling over. Hand in hand, they made their way to the nursery, where Olivia greeted them with her brightest smile. "Good morning, sunshine." Chloe lifted her daughter, pressing kisses to her chubby cheeks. "Ready to start our new adventure?" Christopher watched them together, his heart so full it ached. This was his family, not by blood or law or obligation, but by choice, by love. His phone buzzed with a news alert. Lancaster's wife had filed for divorce, citing years of emotional abuse and infidelity. The carefully constructed facade was crumbling, leaving truth in its wake. "Don't," Chloe said softly, noticing his expression. "Whatever it is, it doesn't matter anymore. We won. We did more than win." Christopher wrapped his arms around both of them, breathing in the scent of baby powder and Chloe's shampoo. "We built something real, something lasting." Olivia reached for his tie, her favorite game, and they both laughed as she tugged with surprising strength. "Speaking of building things," Chloe's eyes sparkled with mischief, "when were you planning to tell me about the playground equipment being delivered to the garden next week?" Christopher had the grace to look sheepish. "Maria told you?" "Maria tells me everything." She kissed him softly. "Just like you show me everything. Your heart, your love, your unwavering support. No more secrets, remember?" "No more secrets," he agreed, "though I reserve the right to surprise you occasionally, for good reasons. Like study renovations and playground equipment. Like proving every day that you deserve the world," he said seriously, "that you always have." Chloe's eyes filled with tears again, but this time they were happy tears. The kind that came with healing, with hope, with the knowledge that love, real, patient, enduring love, could transform even the deepest wounds into something beautiful. Outside, the San Francisco fog was lifting, revealing a clear blue sky. In the garden where their story had begun to shift, workers were already marking the spots where swings and slides would soon bring new music to their home. Olivia's laughter, the sound of family, the rhythm of love finally spoken aloud. They had won more than a legal battle. They had won their future together. 6 months later, the garden bloomed with white roses and fairy lights. Christopher stood at the window of his home office, watching the final preparations for tomorrow's event. Workers moved efficiently through the space, setting up chairs and an elegant arch near the spot where he'd first told Chloe he loved her. Getting nervous? Chloe's voice made him turn. She stood in the doorway, Olivia propped on her hip. Their daughter, now 14 months old, was fighting sleep despite the late hour. About marrying you? Christopher smiled. Never. Though I am slightly concerned about our flower girl staying awake through the ceremony. Olivia, as if understanding she was the topic of discussion, buried her face in her mother's neck with a sleepy mumble. Maria's got the timing, planned down to the minute, Chloe assured him, crossing the room to stand beside him at the window. Nap schedule, snack schedule, everything. Our daughter will be perfectly awake and charming for her big moment. Our daughter. The word still made Christopher's heart skip, even months after Chloe had first used them. The adoption papers had been finalized last week, making official what his heart had known since the beginning. Olivia was his in every way that mattered. The media's going to be disappointed, he mused, wrapping an arm around them both. They were expecting some huge society wedding at the St. Regis. Too bad, Chloe leaned into him. They'll have to settle for an intimate garden ceremony with only the people who truly matter. The guest list was small but meaningful. The other women Lancaster had victimized, now close friends who had supported Chloe through her journey. Christopher's board members who had stood by them during the scandal. Maria's entire family, who had embraced Chloe and Olivia as their own. Even some of Chloe's online students had been invited, their presence a testament to the thriving educational, consulting business she now ran from her third-floor office. Have you looked at the news lately? Christopher asked carefully. He felt Chloe tense slightly against him. About David's sentencing? Yes. Her voice was steady. 15 years for financial fraud and witness tampering. Plus, the civil suits, from the other women. She shook her head. It's strange. I thought knowing he was truly facing consequences would feel more, I don't know, triumphant? But I just feel peaceful, she admitted. Like that chapter of my life is finally completely closed. All I can think about is tomorrow, and our future, and how incredibly lucky we are. Olivia chose that moment to lift her head, reaching for Christopher with imperious demand. He took her gladly, settling her against his chest where she immediately grabbed for his tie. Some things never change, Chloe laughed, watching their nightly ritual. Thank God for that. Christopher pressed a kiss to Olivia's soft hair. Though we might need to invest in clip-ons once she gets stronger. Already ordered, Chloe produced a small box from her pocket. Early wedding present. I had them custom made to match all your favorite ties. Christopher's throat tightened as he opened the box. Inside lay perfect miniature replicas of his signature ties, crafted into clips that would withstand even the most determined baby tugs. You think of everything, he murmured. I learned from the best. She rose on her tiptoes to kiss him, softly. The man who thought of everything for us, who gave us a home and safety and love, who never asked for anything in return. I got everything in return, Christopher corrected. I got my best friend. I got a daughter. I got the family I've dreamed of since I was 10 years old, watching you build sandcastles and thinking you were the most amazing person I'd ever meet. Still am, Chloe teased, but her eyes were bright with tears. Always will be. He shifted, Olivia gently, not wanting to wake her now that she'd finally drifted off. We should get her to bed. Big day tomorrow. They walked together to the nursery, no longer just a room, but a space filled with love and memories. The walls, once stark white, now held photos of their journey. Olivia's first steps, taken right there by the rocking chair. The day Christopher's adoption of her became official, all three of them grinning at the courthouse. Quiet moments of their growing family, captured by Maria's ever-present camera. As they settled Olivia into her crib, Christopher remembered the night. Chloe had first arrived at his door, broken but not defeated. How far they'd come since then, not just in healing and love, but in building something entirely new. I should go, Chloe whispered once they'd tucked Olivia in. "It's bad luck to see the bride before the wedding." "Stay." Christopher caught her hand. "Just a little longer." She smiled, understanding in her eyes. "Worried I'll disappear like Cinderella? More like worried I'll wake up and find out these past months have been a dream." He pulled her close, breathing in her familiar scent. 24 years of loving you in silence. Sometimes it still feels surreal that I get to say it out, loud." "Say it again," she murmured against his chest. "I love you, Chloe Adams, soon to be Chloe Turner." "I love you too, Christopher Turner, forever best friend, father of my child, and finally, the love of my life." They stood there in the soft nursery light, holding each other while their daughter slept peacefully. Through the window they could see the garden where they would be married tomorrow, where their story had transformed from friendship to love, where their future stretched out bright and endless before them. "Now I really have to go." Chloe pulled back reluctantly. "Maria will kill me if I'm not rested for tomorrow." "One more thing." Christopher reached into his pocket, pulling out a small velvet box. "I was going to save this for tomorrow, but, well, this feels like the right moment." Inside the box lay a delicate gold bracelet. Chloe gasped as she recognized it, an exact replica of the friendship bracelet she'd given him when they were 12, the one he'd kept all these years. "You remembered?" "I remembered everything," he said softly, fastening the bracelet around her wrist. "Every moment, every laugh, every dream we shared. This is just a reminder that before we were anything else, we were best friends. That foundation of trust and understanding. It's what makes our love so strong now." Tears spilled down Chloe's cheeks as she touched the bracelet. "How do you always know exactly the right thing to say?" 24 years of practice," he smiled, wiping away her tears, "and a lifetime more to perfect it." A soft knock at the nursery door revealed Maria, trying and failing to look stern. "Enough, you two. The bride needs her beauty sleep, even if we all know she could marry you in pajamas and still look perfect." They shared one last kiss before Chloe let herself be led away to the guest house, where she would spend her final night before becoming Mrs. Turner. Christopher watched from the nursery window until the lights in her space went dark. Tomorrow, they would make their love official in front of their chosen family. Tomorrow, they would begin the next chapter of their story. But tonight, standing in the quiet nursery while his daughter slept and his bride-to-be dreamed across the garden, Christopher felt the full weight of his happiness. 24 years of patience had led to this moment. 24 years of silent love had blossomed into something more beautiful than he could have imagined. They had faced darkness together and emerged stronger. They had built a family based on choice and love rather than obligation. They had transformed pain into purpose, fear into courage, and a lifetime of unspoken feelings into a love story worth telling. Tomorrow couldn't come soon enough, but for now this moment was perfect. Standing in their home, surrounded by the evidence of their love, knowing that every step of their journey had led them exactly where they were meant to be. Together. Finally, completely, forever together. If you were in Christopher's shoes, would you have kept this love in silence for 24 years? Or would you have risked confessing your feelings earlier, even if you were afraid of losing your best friend forever? Your participation in the channel is very important. Please leave your opinion in the comments. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed the story, please subscribe to our channel and leave a comment below, letting us know what you thought. Your feedback and support mean a lot to us. Stay tuned for more exciting stories.